Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, novelisations and a load of other stuff. It's my weekly wrap-up. So this is the final week of August, my annual reading event dedicated to reading trashy books. And I've read a ton of fun stuff this week. I think I said in my weekly wrap-up video last week that I felt like I might be coming down with something. I've definitely come down with something. It's taken me about 5 goes to film that intro, the pre-credits bit. So if I'm even more rambly and nonsensical than normal, apologies for that. I'm going to try and get through this video in one take and then collapse. So let me tell you what I've read. So yes, I've been flat on my back for at least a couple of days this week. We did have a bank holiday here in the UK at the start of the week as well. So yeah, I've got through a lot of books. So let me talk to you about what I've read. So I finished I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones, which I talked about last week in this video. That was a buddy read I did with one of my patrons, Chloe, and it was good, but it wasn't great. I liked it, but I certainly didn't love it. It's an interesting book, and I'm probably going to do a review video on it. But basically, it's about this teenage guy in Texas in the 80s who becomes a slasher villain from a slasher movie. That's effectively the story. So it's got a bit of kind of teen coming of age angsty type stuff in it, but it's also got loads of references to slasher movies. And what it has to say about slasher movies is kind of interesting. But I thought that Stephen Graham Jones did, his take on the slasher genre better in My Heart is a Chainsaw, his previous book. So this is still kind of a fun read and slightly moving at times and interesting at times. But overall, I felt like he'd done these themes, better in previous books. After that then, I read definitely for August, John Adams' Samurai by Christopher Wood. So this is a book basically with the same story as James Clavell's Shogun, but it came out a few years before Shogun. So it's about an English sailor who gets washed up in Japan and meets members of the kind of local community and becomes part of that community, gets involved in like battles and stuff like that, and has sex with a large number of different women, it must be said. So it's definitely a bit bawdier than Shogun, and much shorter as well. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was just a really enjoyable kind of historical adventure type story. I had a lot of fun with it. After that, I read a book which I didn't enjoy as much, I'm still kind of glad I read it, I think. That was the novelisation of the 1990s Super Mario Brothers movie. This novelisation by a guy called Todd Strasser, who wrote, I think, a load of kind of middle grade novelisations, including one that I've talked about on the channel a while ago that I really like, called The Wave, which is a book I first read as a young teenager. Based on a Canadian TV movie about this true case in a Californian, I think, high school, where this teacher did like this social experiment to show his students how the Nazis managed to come to power in Germany. And it went horribly wrong, basically. So this book, anyway, is nothing like that, as you can imagine. It's a very light adaptation of a not terribly good film. Please don't come at me in the comments if you're a big fan of the Super Mario Brothers movie. It was a very quick, very silly, kind of reasonably entertaining read. It does have lovely colour illustrations or colour photos from the movie in the middle, which they always used to do in these movie adaptations, and sadly don't do anymore. So yeah, I read it to tick off the based on a video game square on the Garbingo card, but I won't be reading it again, let's put it that way. I should have said John Adams' Samurai ticked off the green on the cover square in memory of Pax Panic. After that then, I read another movie novelisation. This is a more recent one, so this came out I think in 2011, yeah. So this is by Shaun Hutson, who's a British horror writer who I really like, been going since the 80s. I've always enjoyed his stuff. It's very pulpy, very over the top. So this is a novelisation of a Hammer movie that came out, I think, in the early 70s, either the very late 60s or the early 70s, which is a vampire story about these two twins, one of whom gets infected and becomes a vampire, and the other one doesn't. So it's got a lot of that kind of Hammer vibe to it, but it's got a bit of sauciness as well. So this is when, towards kind of the end of the Hammer era, really, when they were injecting a bit of sex into their films to try and get bums on seats. This was a really solid novelisation. It reminded me a bit of the Witches books by James Dark that I've talked about on the channel before, in terms of kind of themes and things like that. But it was just a fun book with that, definitely had that Hammer vibe, but also it was a bit more graphic than the movie is, from what I remember of the movie anyway. Shaun Hutson does kind of layer a bit of graphic sex and violence on top. But yeah, I enjoyed it anyway. After that then, I read a Doc Savage book, so I needed to read a book to tick off the 1930s in my list of decades that I've read for Garble this year. So I read book 8 in the Doc Savage series, which was Land of Terror. This was great. This is probably my favourite Doc Savage book I've read so far. So it starts off in New York with an acquaintance of Doc Savage, who Doc Savage is about to meet for lunch, getting murdered in a really weird way. And Doc Savage then chases after this gang that have murdered him. So you get the first half of the book is basically a chase through New York, with Doc Savage gradually catching up with members of the gang and dispatching them. It reminded me a lot of kind of Batman. It had that kind of slightly dark vigilante kind of feel to it. And then in the second half of the book, for no reason at all really, I mean the plot does kind of lead them there, but it felt very different from the first half of the book. They end up going to an island off the coast of New Zealand where there are still dinosaurs. So they have like an adventure with dinosaurs. So it was kind of Batman meets Jurassic Park, which is as much fun as it sounds. So I really enjoyed that. After that, I read a book I thought I wouldn't manage to read for Garble August just because it's so long, but I thought I'd give it a try and I really got into it. That is Lace by Shirley Conran. I did make a short video about how fantastic this cover is. I really think it's rather wonderful. So this is a bonkbuster in the same mode as Valley of the Dolls, which I talked about recently. So Valley of the Dolls follows four women, three or four women who are in and around the movie industry. Lace follows women who are kind of in and around the fashion industry, and follows them from their school days up until kind of their late 70s, early 80s. But the kind of hook of Lace, which you get at the start, is the fact that one of these women, when they were much younger, gave birth to a daughter, and gave that daughter away basically for adoption. And the daughter has now grown up and is she knows it's one of these four women, and she's trying to figure out which one it is. And it's got the classic line at the end of chapter 1 where she's cornered them all and says, "Which one of you bitches is my mother?" And basically Shirley Jackson somehow manages to spread that mystery out over I said Shirley Jackson, didn't I? Shirley Conran. My brain is really not working. If this was written by Shirley Jackson, though, I would definitely read it. So she spreads that story out over several decades and 750 pages as you learn the backstories of these women and try and figure out which one is the mother. And at the end, you do find out. So yeah, just kind of very trashy, had lots and lots of sex in it. And a lot of the sex was very weird and very horrible, it has to be said, including a scene with goldfish. I was told there was something about goldfish in this book, and now I know what that was, and it was very weird. And I suspect something that has never actually happened in real life. So yes, this is one of those books that loads of people, seeing me read it, have said, I read that when I was much too young, and it taught me everything I ever needed to know about sex. So yes, it's a fun book, very much of its time, but I did enjoy it. Okay, 2 books to go, and then I can collapse. Right, so after that I read a book from the 1950s, to tick off that decade, which was The Count of Nine by Erle Stanley Gardner. So I've never read Erle Stanley Gardner, obviously a very prolific mystery writer, best known for creating the character of Perry Mason. This wasn't a Perry Mason one. This featured a duo of detectives called Lamb and Cool. Eerie, one of my subscribers, pointed out that Cool has both the best and worst name ever. So she's a female detective. Her full name is Bertha Cool, which is amazing. So this was a very light, kind of fluffy, quite silly mystery novel about it like revolves around an explorer who's like travelled the world and has got like this very precious jade idol and also a blowpipe, and they both get stolen, and the detectives are trying to solve the mystery. And then there's a murder as well involving the blowpipe. That's not too much for a spoiler. So yeah, it was very silly. It felt like an episode of a silly TV show, really. But I did have a good time with it. I enjoyed it. And then I read a book that I knew very little about. So I needed to read something for the 1940s. I was originally going to read this book, Lady Godiva and Master Tom by Erle C4, which Annie from Obscure Book Adventures very kindly sent me after last Garb August when she'd read it. I was going to read it, and then when I went on Goodreads to add it, I saw there were only 2 ratings for this book. One of which was for 2 stars and one of which was for 1 star. The 1-star rating was from Annie, and she had warned me she thought it was a terrible book, and I just decided, do I really want to do this to myself? No, probably not. So I found something else from the 40s, and I'm really glad I did, because it was fantastic. It was a book called The Screaming Mimi by an author called Fredric Brown. So Fredric Brown kind of grew up writing like in the pulp magazines, writing crime fiction and science fiction. And became best known for his science fiction, quite a well-respected science fiction writer. But this was an early 1940s crime novel by him, which seems to have largely been forgotten about. It's still in print, but only in a crappy digital edition, basically, that only exists because it was made into a movie with, what was her name? I want to say Britt Ekland, but it wasn't. Oh, Anita Ekberg. Yeah, the movie starred Anita Ekberg. Anyway, it was fantastic. It was really, really good. So it's so the central character is a journalist who's also an alcoholic, who's like on a bender basically, is absolutely smashed, and he sees this woman getting attacked by a serial killer basically. She manages to survive, and when he's kind of sobered up the next day, starts looking into this case, and the serial killer's been operating in the city. It's set in Chicago, and has killed I think 3 women at this point. And he sets out to try and figure out, to find their identity basically, and becomes slightly obsessed with this woman as well. And that's basically the story. So it's really quite dark, like a very early serial killer novel, with some fantastic twists along the way, and just a wonderfully present narrator. I really enjoyed the way Fredric Brown did the narration. It was just fun. It was just a really gripping, entertaining book. I had a fantastic time with it. I will definitely be reading some more Fredric Brown, and I'm probably going to do a video about it as well. So I've just finished that. I'm filming this on the 31st of August, so I probably I won't start any other novels for Garb August. I think I'm going to read some comics. So I've got a stack of Commando comics that I haven't got to yet. So I think I'm going to read those for the rest of the day. Right, that's all the book stuff. I'll quickly go through channel stuff. So in the last week, you've had a video from me talking about the Factor sequence by Stark Holborn, a really fun trio of science fiction novels. I did a video which lots of people seem to have really enjoyed, and pleasingly I saw Brian from Bookish did a version of it today, which is the 10 books that made me, so books that really shaped me as a reader. I did my September TBR talking about things I'm going to be reading for Shorty September. And I did, I'm trying to read my handwriting, I did a video about representation in books and how representation can make a good book even better for the right reader. In the week ahead, I have got 2 things filmed. So I've got an unboxing and first impressions video for this, the Big Me B571C, which is a really nice colour e-ink reader. Which Big Me very kindly sent me to review. So I've got an unboxing video for that. I've kind of spoiled that, haven't I, by showing you what it looks like out of the box, but yeah, look out for that. And then I've also got a book haul video, which includes an unboxing. So I had a mystery box of books turn up earlier in the week, which I opened on camera, so you can enjoy that experience with me. And I had some other books I picked up recently as well that I talk about. So those 2 videos will definitely be going up this week. I will try and get 2 more videos filmed, but I'll see how I feel. So yeah, I'm not sure what those other 2 videos will be, but probably something easy. Anyway, I will leave it there. I'm going to go and have a cup of tea and a lemsip and a lie down. But I will say, as always, thanks very much for watching. I hope you're safe and well out there. I hope you're really good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio. Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, everything I've read in the last week. Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about... Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, novelization...